So, this is a good time to do the segment that we always do. Laws you don't know, you want to know. Basically, we're going to be talking about, well, mostly me, talking about car stops. We're all lawyers. We'll all talk about it. So it's car stops. Basically, when they can search your car and what can they search. All right, so generally, police officers should only be searching your car for just a couple reasons, right? If they think that there's a criminal activity, so a perfect example of that would be, if a police officer pulls you over for a busted taillight, then he goes to your window and says, license, registration, yada yada, and he smells marijuana or he smells alcohol, all right? That would be a crime because he might think you're driving under the influence, okay? Or that you have possession of, drugs.
Sorry, just to jump in real quick. So if he pulls you over for like the tail light, busted tail light, he has to look for the instrumentalities of the crime.
Right.
There's nothing else he should be looking for unless it's in plain view. That can.
That's the second way, plain view, right?
Oh, good segment. But there's nothing he should be looking for the busted tail light other than to get your license and registration and then give you a ticket for a busted tail light or give you a warning and say, fix it.
Right.
But now, like, he smells marijuana.
That's always the default, though.
That's always a default.
Yeah, they always smell marijuana.
Whenever there's a car search, they smell marijuana or something like that. That's the most frequent thing that I see. And the second one, which is what Jabril brought up, is something in plain sight. So if he's pulling you over for a busted taillight, and police officers are allowed to look into your car from the outside through the windows, right? So they can even use a flashlight, and if they see something, on the floor that they might think is a bag of drugs because it's labeled a bag of drugs, that's real. That really happened. Google it. It happened in Florida.
It's Florida.
Yeah. Ain't that your state? No.
Don't do it like that.
It said a bag of drugs.
I'm telling you, Google it now. There was somebody arrested in Florida after the police pulled him over. They suspected there were drugs in the bag because the bag said bag full of drugs. So
Only Florida that
Florida man be doing stuff. So if they see, obviously if they see a gun or a butt of a gun or
That's
something
it.
like that, that's it. So
Go
they
to
can
big
search your
boy
car,
jail.
all right?
Well,
Now,
just to jump in on that, sometimes they see a butt of the gun after they've searched the car. So they're walking up in plain view. You've hidden the gun pretty well, so they can't see it. But however, after they tell you they smell marijuana and tell you to get out the car, search the
There
car.
it is.
There's the gun where they
Yeah.
found it, where you hid it.
Exactly.
But they saw it in plain view.
right, exactly. So now what I mean by search, right? Generally, they can only search the area where the passengers sit, right? So that's the inside of the car. That does not include the trunk. That does not include the glove box. That does not include the hood, stuff like that. They can only search the passenger area of the
It's
car.
usually like
right?
the grabbable area.
They call it the grabbable area, right? So I know me personally, I keep my glove box locked, and I keep the trunk locked. It's covered. I drive like a hatchback or whatever. So you can't see in the trunk. The glove box is locked. But there is also a third way they search the car is if you're driving while black. So I get pulled over all the time, and they pull me out of the car. Now, police can order you out of the car for any reason, but they're not. That doesn't give them a license to search the car when they pull you out. Okay, so a lot of times it's by undercover cops. The uniform cops, they don't really, tell me to get out the car or anything. But the undercovers tell me to get out the car. They're looking for stuff. Yeah. I drive a sports car with tints that is registered at a state. Now the tints are legal in that state that I registered in, but they wouldn't be legal if the car was registered in New York. But driving while black, yada yada, I get pulled out of the car all the time. So I have a habit of keeping all my information in the visor, so I don't have to go in my glove box.
So they can say
Right.
they saw inside of the glove box.
Right, exactly. And I keep the trunk locked and everything, all right? But there have also been instances where, when they pull me out of the car, which I do not consent to a search, okay, because that's another way they can get in your car. If you consent to them searching your car, do not consent. They'll probably pull you out anyway, like they do me. And they have went in my glove box. They have taken the key out of my ignition, unlocked the glove box, clearly illegal. They have broken my lock on the glove box and gone through it anyway, all right? So I'm not saying that these are always practical
Foolproof
ways,
right.
But this is how it's done. Now, I will also segue to a segment we call Adventures of Gene and Jay. because Gene and Jay, yeah, no relation to anybody up here or that we might know of. So, like I said, I have a sports car. It's a Volkswagen, but Gene actually has a Tesla. Okay, Teslas, which, contrary to popular belief, are not as expensive as you might think. They're kind of affordable, you know, and I mean like maybe within the $30,000 to $40,000 range, you can get a Tesla. But the interesting thing that he told me about was that the police actually tried to stop them, Gene and Jay, hypothetically, one day, driving throughout let's say the Bronx, and they pulled the car over. All right, undercover cops, they ordered him out of the car. Now, the interesting thing about Tesla is that they have something called valet mode. All right, valet mode is basically if you were to, you know, give your car to a valet, they can only go a certain speed limit, but they can only open the doors. They can't open the glove box; it's automatically locked. They can't go in your trunk. Okay, so that if you put your car in valet mode, the cops cannot go into that the glove box or the trunk. All right. But another good thing about it is that the way you lock the trunk and the glove box. Now, if you remember episode 1, we talked about how police can get at your phones, right? They can use biometrics. Biometrics are like your fingerprints, the eye scan, the face scan, stuff like that. Police can order you to give your fingerprints, order you to use your face to unlock your phone. But what they cannot do is they cannot demand that you put in your password or do the zigzag stuff, okay? Because that is considered something in your mind, and they would have to then get a search warrant to go into that phone, okay? So I say that because the interesting thing about valet mode is that it does not use biometrics to put it in valet mode, but it uses a PIN code. So once you put your car in valet mode, they cannot, like they did me, take my key out of the ignition and use it to unlock that glove box. They would have to know your code to get access to your glove box and your trunk, okay? So I would think that they would need a search warrant, which they should have gotten in the first place. So that is just another, you know, lesson on car stops. Now, shout out to Elon Musk. I'm gonna be waiting for your phone call. If you get a lot of people buying Teslas, you know why, it's because of the show. So just holla at me.
All 4 of us.
Just,
Right.
just to jump, I guess, piggyback off what you said.
Mm-hmm.
I know, like in the courts though, like with the biometrics, with opening the phone, the courts are divided. So certain states that's true, and other states it's not.
Yeah, that's a fact.
In addition to with the car stops, so a police officer can order you out of a car. So I know before I became an attorney, I was like, you can't order me out of the car.
I think that's everybody.
I was like, nah, I gave you no reason to get out. I'm not getting out.
And that's when they can break the window. They can call their, I think, ESU unit, emergency service unit, take you out of there, so they can. One of the reasons, like, they can search your car again for the instrumentalities of the crime if they smell marijuana. Now, smelling marijuana, they can search anywhere, because that marijuana could be coming from anywhere, even in the trunk. And another way they can search your vehicle is if they arrest you for a particular reason.
That's called a search incident to a lawful arrest. Right.
No, but it's so important to know that, because car stops have historically been used as a way of trying to prosecute people or to figure out how to arrest someone who really hasn't committed any crime.
Yep.
You know, I got to tell you, growing up, one of the things that I didn't mention before that fed into me wanting to be a lawyer is that I was always stopped. Back in the 70s, my father had a car called a Buick Electra Deuce and a Quarter.
A Buick Electric.
Deuce and a Quarter.
So that was a good car.
225, yeah. That was like the Mercedes of that time,
Okay.
if you're from the neighborhood, you know what I mean? So
No, you
this
get
was this
stopped.
big car. It was like big like a Lincoln, and it was all electric inside, which most cars weren't. Everything was electric inside the car. And I remember my dad used to let me drive it from time to time. And anytime I pulled that car out, I would get pulled over immediately. and it was always looking for something. But you know, it's good. You mentioned a while ago about how you learned how to handle certain situations and talk to law enforcement, and that's so important to know how to do it, because in those transactions, when they realized I was driving legally and I had all my credentials, they were trying to goad you into something to create the incident. You know what I mean? And that's why dealing with car stops is very important. You know, very often they get out nasty, license and registration. And I remember one time in particular, I got out, they said license and registration, and he asked me, where'd you get the car? And my response was my driveway, which I thought was a legitimate answer. It became very hostile.
Real quick.
What are you telling you, smart guy? I said, no, you asked me, where did I get the car? It's my dad's car. I got it out the driveway. Oh, you think you're funny, huh? No, you asked me where I got the car. Well,
I think that's funny.
Hilarious.
It is funny. It is funny. It is funny.
But, you know, to tell you the truth, it happened all the time. And there was a close friend of mine, Ernest. I'll give you a shout out.
Shout out, Ernie.
Hey, Ernest.
We used to hang tough, I mean, all through high school. And he said, you know what you just mentioned, he said, you know, take your license and registration on your insurance card out. He used to get you an insurance card and hold it. And I remember once we were driving down Springfield Boulevard and some police came toward us and they pointed at us. So he said, I tell you what, why don't you just pull over? Just pull over, they're gonna come. And we did. So we pulled over, I put the windows down, and I held the driver's and registration and everything out the window.
So you wait, y'all made eye contact?
Yeah,
The cops was looking at you, you was looking
like,
at them?
Come get it, come on. I know y'all gonna
I
stop
know
me.
the
Come
drill.
on.
And I think everybody's had that, you know, that feeling in their stomach when they look in their rear view. They're like, oh,
That's for me.
there go the U-turn. Oh,
Here
here
they
it go.
come.
Yep. Then all of a sudden it's 10-2, and you know.
But I think we scored one for us that day. They ran up, he took it, he looked at it, he never said a word. License, registration, he looked at it, and he took it and threw it back at me.
He mad. 'Cause he couldn't get
He
nothing.
couldn't get me.
You know what's crazy? It's like this happened recently. I got pulled over in my cars, me and my wife.
In the Bronx?
No, this is Jamaica, Queens. Like actually near the train stop in Jamaica over there.
Yeah.
I got pulled over. I just picked her up, and I got pulled over by two white dudes in hoodies driving a red Jeep, right?
It's like, what you doing over here, sir?
Right, yeah, but I mean, like, that's not your typical car, like, so I'm like, all right, well, they got flashes on, let me just stop, because, you know, you gotta be careful when you stop
Right,
for certain,
right.
you know, people. So I stopped, and, you know, he asked license, registration, whatever, and he's like, so, I gave him my New York license, but, you know, my car's registered in Virginia. He's like, oh, okay, what you doing up here? I'm like, oh, you know, I live here. You know, he's like, oh, so, how you registered in Virginia? What's going on? And we started talking, basically, and he was like, well, you know, who lives down there, yada yada. And he couldn't comprehend
That you can register somewhere
that you can
else
register
and have
your car
in-
somewhere else
Yeah, yeah.
and have it. And it's like, you know, does that mean that I'm committing a crime? Like, you know, something like that? But, you know, and that's basically how it always happens. Like, it's always undercover stopping me, you know, always. And they're always asking me these extra questions. You know, they trying to see, like, if you're nervous, you know,
If you're
how you handle,
fidgety.
yeah, if you're fidgety. They're trying to get a reason to get into your car. Because
That's right.
another thing, they can search your car if, you know, just for their safety. You know,
For
or they
this-
can take
or
you out of
any
the car.
movements,
Yeah, any
movements.
movements, you know, if
Furtive
you're
movements.
nervous, yeah, furtive movements, you know, that's the word they always use.
You just mean
So,
anything.
you know, they just ask you these
Movements.
questions. Now, yeah, you know, I could have said some answers like you did. Oh, the car came in the driveway, you know. But I mean, I know.
I mean, you're right. It did.
But I mean, you know, and you know, you can refuse to answer questions, but I mean, it's kind of a catch-22 because they can take that as, you know, oh, you trying
He's
to
being
hide something, you're
difficult,
being
right.
difficult, now get out the car, you know. So, you know, it goes back to what you were saying, like you got to know when to.
When it's a battle to fight.
Right.
when you just-
What battles to fight? You got to
Yeah.
pick your battles, you know, which is a lot of what we do, being minorities.
Right, and what I say to young men who talk to me about it is just remember, the courtroom is your home stadium, all right? The street is the police officer's home stadium. So you do what you have to in their stadium till you get to your stadium.
Right.
Because that's where the scales get balanced.
Right. Yeah.
I got pulled over one time because I see the cop, like you said, I see the cop.
Here they come.
Oh, we be
I said-
watching them now.
Yeah, I see him, and I was like, let me just pull over so he can't even say
That
he
I
could-
ran,
that I
right.
do that again.
Yeah.
So I just pulled over, waited for him to leave, and he still came. Whoop whoop. I said, oh God. So I did what you did, but I wound down all my windows.
Yep.
I got all my license, registration, insurance. I got my ID. Got it real quick. Boom, boom, boom. And I have it there, ready on one hand on the steering wheel. And he says, license, registration. I give it to him. And he says, you know why I stopped you? And I said, no, why? He said, because you don't have your seatbelt on. And you know, it's funny. I just pressed my seatbelt. I took my seatbelt off to reach
Get the
for
stuff.
everything. And I said, I have my seatbelt on, man. Really?
Yeah,
Really?
you know what to say.
I
Yeah.
was unfortunate. I got a ticket for that.
Yeah.
For no seatbelt?
But no seatbelt.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Oh,
Yeah.
big.
See?